Welcome you all to tonight's webinar hosted by the Cal Lutheran MPPA program and the ICMA student chapter here at CLU. And yeah, we have some incredible speakers this evening. We'll talk about sort of the job search, application, interviewing process. I got a shout out to Roxanne, I think came up with the title of this webinar, which is I Just Graduated, What Do I Do Next? Which is very timely because it's graduation season. And then hopefully there's things we can prepare for even before we graduate. We have some really incredible speakers this evening. Yeah, first of all, PJ Gagahena, Assistant City Manager, City of Moore Park, and also am on the Advisory Council for the MPPA program and serve as the Faculty Advisor for the ICMA student chapter here on campus. Yeah, just I've been here in the city of Moore Park for about 3 years now, and before that, most of my career a lot of it was involved in human resources, so very familiar with the subject in terms of application and hiring and things of that nature. But I'm really honored to have two guest speakers that we have this evening who have extensive HR experience as well, and have probably gone through a lot of things you may be asking about and probably have seen all kinds of situations happen. But first, I want to introduce you all to Erica Herrera Tariquez. She also was our guest speaker at the last webinar on assistant and deputy city managers. But I'll have Erica kind of provide her own background, but she's the assistant city manager for the city of Fillmore, and also has an extensive HR background experience, so I thought we'd welcome her back this evening. And then we also have Catherine or Katie Reynolds, who's one of your fellow MPPA classmates who've just graduated, so congratulations, Katie. And really, we are relying on her for her wealth of experience and knowledge as well in human resources, particularly here in Ventura County. So that's why we have her speaking this tonight as well. So that's really what we're going to sort of discuss this evening. And I think the different things we'll go over is sort of how to start the job search process, talk about working for a large city, small city, or county, discuss civil service exams, what's that about, preparing and how to conduct your interviews well. And then we'll also talk about executive recruitment as you sort of advance in your career and looking for those higher level positions, the values of professional organizations, maybe your alumni groups here, like here at Cal Lutheran, how to maximize those resources, and then internships and fellowships. And along the way, feel free to ask questions. This is going to be more of a conversation. I like how we have a small group here. And we're also going to rely on some of your input and experiences as well, because I know many of you on this call and Zoom meeting have a lot of experience in this as well that you could share with everybody. So with that, I'll have Erica maybe just briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll hand it off to Katie, and then we'll get started.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, PJ. Like PJ said, my name's Erica Herrera. I am the Assistant City Manager with City of Fillmore here in Ventura County. I started at the Human Resources Deputy City Clerk about 4 years ago. And then a year and a half ago, I got promoted to Assistant City Manager. So HR has been my background. Prior to that, I worked for a school district also in human resources. I also have an MPA, not from Cal Luth, but California Baptist University. And so I think HR is important because it's the backbone of every organization. And yeah, I'm excited to be here tonight, and hopefully we can answer any questions that the group may have. I'll just keep it short.
All right, Katie.
Good evening. My name is Katie Reynolds, and I do have just one more term left to finish my MPPA. It's been an incredible experience. I just have spent 27 years working for the County of Ventura, and all of that 27 years had something to do with human resources. In 1992, I started as a department representative for ambulatory care in the healthcare agency. And then step by step, learned more about human resources and eventually became the first decentralized HR manager for the Information Technology Services Department. And then consequently was promoted to the county executive office. So I have a background of 15 years in specifically recruiting and advising on HR matters, some labor relations, some classification, a little tiny bit of compensation, and a lot of the benefits and all that happened at the department level, but that was a long time ago. So my main focus this evening is to help people understand the recruitment process from a public agency perspective as a recruiter, so that they understand what we look for and how to complete the applications and go through the process, because it can be quite overwhelming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Erica. Yeah. And really, the first thing about, sort of your job search and your first step is really sort of, what do you want to do? Right. That's really what you want to think about. We're obviously talking about local government this evening. Is that the field and area you want to invest in and really invest your career in for the short or long term? Obviously we have I have students I teach that are looking to go into the nonprofit world, the private sector. I'm sure some of you here have some of those experiences as well. Working for a union, working for sort of a special district versus a city or county. So those are the things you want to kind of look for. I know some of us, when I started my career, I sort of had an idea I wanted to work in local government. I didn't really know what that would look like. But sometimes it's just trial and error as well. So if you're not sure about what to do, that's okay as well. Get a job or go to or apply for a position that you think you're going to like and see if you like it. And if not, it doesn't hurt to change and pivot and look for other opportunities. But yeah, just really think about what you want to do. The other thing, because we're talking about local government, obviously applying for the state or applying for the federal government, it is very bureaucratic. Those have its own sets of sort of examinations and requirements and different procedures, but it's very similar maybe to a larger organization in local government, like a large city or a large county. But since we're talking about local government here, really focusing on just cities and counties, and maybe I could, maybe ask Erica, give some perspective on what's it like working for either, a city versus working for a county.
Sure, PJ. I think that obviously the type of how the government structured is, or the organization, it's similar in the sense that for a city, it's a council city manager type of government. And then at a county level, you have the county board of supervisors and then a CEO, which would be the equivalent of a city manager, right? Local government is obviously restricted in size. There's a lot less resources, but you also are in charge of just your own jurisdiction. Some of the things that local government will be doing is, if you have a water district within your city or your water department and sewer, you oversee that. You oversee your own public works department, streets, lighting. Actually, I think we're the only, Fillmore and Oxnard are the only two cities in Ventura County, if I'm correct, that still have their own fire department. The rest contracts out with the county. And so some cities are also in charge of their own fire and police. Others contract out with the county. And then the county is more responsible for overseeing the health system, jails, social programs, initiatives for the unhoused individuals, and so on. So in a big scale, those are like the main differences between like local government and county, in my opinion. I'm going to focus more on city local government because that's what obviously I do on a daily basis. One of the things that I enjoy the most is being able to see or have a faster impact with the legislations or initiatives that are being pushed from county down to staff, or sorry, not county, council down to staff. And so it's easier in that regard because at least the city I work for, it's very small. And so we can see and have an impact a lot faster than it would be at a county level. Budget size too, our budget is very small in comparison to some of the other larger organizations in citywide and the county, and obviously in comparison with the county itself.
Yeah, and my experience here is, so I work for the city of New York, which is the largest city in the United States. You had 30, 40 city council members. You had a mayor, very political. I mean, obviously just managing New York City is a huge responsibility. Then I worked for the city of Los Angeles for basically part of my career. So I could probably equate that to sort of working for a county. I mean, you had 40,000 employees, in the city of Los Angeles. And then, with that, 20, 30 plus city departments. And then you sort of could get a little lost in there, I would say. And that form of government is a strong mayor form of government. And usually you'll see that in the larger cities like New York or Los Angeles, where the chief executive officer is actually the mayor, right? So the mayor is the one who hires the department heads. The mayor is the one who sets and oversees the departments and kind of makes those executive level decisions that versus what a chief executive officer or a city manager or county administrator would be doing. So like in the city of LA, it was very, very political because the budget, everything was prepared by the mayor's office, and all the appointments to boards and commissions are made by the mayor. And so, and then, where the department I worked for was the LA Department of Water and Power. So you have, 10,000 employees. And I think the county of Ventura has about 10,000 employees. I was working on a $400 million budget at DWP for my division. Moorpark, $60 million budget. You know what I mean? So, so it really depends. I think people thrive in a large city or in a county. They have very successful careers, but like what Erica said, I think my pathway, like looking at it, the city management profession was, and working for a smaller city is sort of that immediate impact you have and the closer interactions you have with the residents and the businesses and things like that. So those are things you got to look for. I think the benefits of working for a large city or a county is there's a lot of transfer opportunities. There's a lot of advancement opportunities. And then working for a smaller city, you may not have that many advancement opportunities because the higher you go up, the less positions are available. And then you can't, if you wanted to sort of do a transfer, you'd have to sort of work in a different city, right? And in a county or a large city, you kind of can do a transfer anytime. I mean, that's what I did. I sort of worked in budget, then I transferred it to the economic development division, then I transferred. I mean, there's different things you can do, and you don't have to really, do a whole lot with those transfers. So there's some benefits definitely for working for a large city or county as well. I'm going to turn to sort of the job search process. And I'm going to hand this off to Katie a little bit in terms of, providing or sharing some tips in the job search arena.
Thanks, PJ. Yeah, so I do this a lot with people that are interested in working for the County of Ventura. I really believe in customer service, that I am in service not only to my departments and hiring managers and the county, but to the constituents and other individuals in any state or anywhere that wants to come work for the County of Ventura. So in general, and I'm talking about my experience with the county, but also having done some research and worked with other HR analysts in different public sector agencies across the county. In general, if you are interested in working in any public agency, you can go online, find the public agency's website, and they will have, if you look under departments, sometimes you have to dig a little bit for human resources, but that's what you want to find. You want to find the human resources department. And many of them will have their classifications posted online. So you can actually see what classifications they use, as well as the open job opportunities. And you can search on names and read the job descriptions. You can read the job postings to get an understanding for what the different positions do within the organization. One thing, as you get into larger employers, such as the County of Ventura, you will find that there's some job classifications that are utilized specifically by different departments. The Resource Management Agency has their own classifications. General Service Agency has some of their own. The fire department certainly has their own. But then there's classifications that are used across a county. Across the county. These are general classifications. And when those particular job recruitments are posted, they are modified into specifications that are specific to the assignment that recruitment is filling. What that means is that it may be a program administrator and the classification is very general, but has a scope of different, like there's a 1, 2, 3 senior, and there's a scope for each one of the different in the classifications in the series, but they can modify it to fit the specific assignment. So you'll see these recruitments, they will have different working titles, but if you look at the job bulletin, it'll say like program administrator 1, 2, 3. And so sometimes people get confused because they don't understand why the different job bulletins look so different for classifications that really are using the same classification, but that's why. So if you see that they have general classifications, those can show up as different opportunities in different departments. So I always recommend that people find the job classifications, and many of the different public agencies in Ventura County use a application through governmentjobs.com. Mm-hmm. And those particular job postings will be somewhat similar. The classifications, you can click on the title and read it. And the top part describes the classification. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, usually it'll explain what's required to meet the minimum requirements. And in the top right-hand corner, there's a button that says subscribe. If you click on that, it opens up another page that's an interest card. And that can be filled out. And when that particular classification is open for an open recruitment that people can apply for, you'll get an email. So that way, if it's open, you can go back and apply for it online. So that's a very helpful tool that I tell the different individuals about, because it can be very overwhelming trying to look at all the different job postings all the time. Right now, we probably have 125 posted. So, but you can search on titles too within that, see what you come up with.
Definitely. Erica, you have any tips in the job search or application process?
Yes. So if you're trying to apply for more of local government jobs, I think the Municipal Management Association of Southern California, or MMASC, is a really good tool. They do have a student membership, which is reduced of cost if you're interested, but they also have a free job post. And a lot of jurisdictions, not only in Ventura County, but in this region, typically will post their openings there. And I think it's of great value. There's also others, as you move up the ladder and government jobs, there's a page called Public CEO. They also have a very robust job board. I personally post a lot of our jobs there because I think it's they have a really, really good outreach. There's another website called California City News. They also have more of executive level positions posted. And then, like Katie was saying, government jobs is also a really good tool to utilize. Follow on LinkedIn too. You know, most of the local jurisdictions have a LinkedIn account, and whenever there's a post, it will show up on the LinkedIn or all other social medias as well. Most of the websites nowadays have a subscribe button as well. If you go in and you can choose what sort of feed you want to receive via email, because again, just seconding what Katie was mentioning, searching for a job is very overwhelming, especially when you're just graduating and then you're putting all these applications, and sometimes it takes, you know, weeks for you to hear back, and then you start losing hope and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get a call back or an email. Don't get discouraged. Sometimes also from like the HR department, it's overwhelming too when you have multiple posts and in a much smaller scale like Fillmore, we all wear different hats. And so not only a person is doing recruitment, but they're also doing benefits. And then we're handling other duties at the same time. And so just because you haven't heard back doesn't necessarily mean that your application might not be getting looked at. But most importantly, take time to read the job description before you're applying for a job, so that when you're customizing your cover letter, you can highlight some of the most important things that that job is requiring. And then you can utilize some of your past experiences and point that as a selling point of why you're a good applicant. And that always catches the eye of the recruiter. But spend some time, prepare for it. Don't just apply. Attention to detail is really important. I can't tell you how many times I've received applications that said, dear County of Ventura, or like, dear, you know, City of Moore Park recruitment team. And that for the recruiter is a turnoff, because you're like, okay, well, are you applying to the right job, or you're just going on like this whole process of you just wanting to get a job and not really paying attention to what you're submitting the application to. So, yeah, those are some of my tips.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, as much as, you know, you definitely want to customize, I definitely agree with that. Same thing with your resume, should definitely customize that. I think the MMASC job page is one of the best ones I've ever seen. I posted that on the chat and the other sites that Erica mentioned.
Can I add something too?
Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
So I do advertise to the MMASC and California City and County News regularly. Just a point that many of the local agencies here are under civil service regulations. Some are not. Fillmore is not, as I understand it. And if you're under civil service regulations, there are specific hoops that candidates have to go through. And for example, the County of Ventura, you can attach a resume, but we're not going to use that. You can attach a letter or, you know, of reference or an introductory letter. We're not going to look at that. We're looking at the application, because under civil service regulations, we have to go through the same process for every single applicant. If not, it's considered preferential treatment, and we are liable for that under civil service regulations. So it's really, really important to read the job bulletin and look at the section. This is governmentjobs.com type applications. They'll talk about the recruitment process. That's what we call it, that different agencies use different titles. But it tells you exactly what you need to do to apply. Sometimes it's just an application review. Sometimes they use training and experience evaluations. I was surprised when I did a search of the state of California. And for civil service exams, with the exception of safety always is special. That's things like your sheriff, fire, DA, things like that. They're using a lot of a process called training and experience evaluation, and they will have supplemental questions. We do this too, that are designed specifically to elicit information from the candidates so that they can be used to rate the candidates, using this process called a training and experience evaluation. And they have we have subject matter experts that evaluate the applications anonymously. They don't see any personal information. They don't see any attachments. So it's just on what is in the education, work experience, and the answers to the supplemental questions. So it's really important to remember that and to read the job bulletin so you understand what process is being used. Sometimes a training and experience evaluation will be used to reduce the pool. If it's a very large pool, they may use that, and only the candidates that score beyond a certain level get invited to the next level, which could be an oral exam. So the job bulletins generally explain this. Some job bulletins are more logical in how they explain it. I saw a lot of differences, even in the ones using governmentjobs.com. But don't rush through the job bulletin. Read the job bulletin. It'll tell you what's required. It's tell you what's desired. If it's desired, it's a nice to have, but it doesn't mean that it's needed to get to the next step. So, and generally, there's usually a contact name or number on the job bulletin if you have questions about the particular recruitment. Use it. That's why it's there. If it's there, use it. And they can't give you preferential treatment, but they can explain the process if you have questions about the process.
Yep, and I think that was awesome tips, Katie. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Contact HR, whoever the contact person is there, at least for smaller cities like Fillmore or Moore Park, 1,000. I mean, you can call the HR department, ask more information about the position, ask about how's the structure like in that organization. Has there been, if you are so brave, bold, ask, has there been a lot of turnover, or or is there some leadership changes happening? How come I'm seeing all these vacancies now in your city? Other couple tips. I found out for some areas, some cities, not everyone posts on these bulletin boards, and so sometimes you may have to look at a geographic area where you're targeting. You may have to check their HR web pages specifically, because some cities do not advertise. I don't know why. But if you are definitely targeting a specific regional area and a cluster of cities, I would just save like the links to the HR web pages and check them frequently. That's why I was able to find some different types of jobs and positions, because no one else was applying because they never advertised on governmentjobs.com. So I had less competition in some of those applications. The other thing I want to mention too is what tips that I would use is I have my resume and I have converted it into plain word text, right? Because now if I'm filling in a form with a county, I can just copy and paste all my information that's on plain text, right? And easily pastable into any form or any application form that I'm applying to. And then what I also do is I have different versions of my resume. I'll have a resume for applying for a public information officer position. My resume is catered to PI, that specific field. I'll have a different resume if I want to be an HR director. My resume is only filled with relevant information related to HR. I'm not going to add public information on there because that person doesn't care about that. I'm applying for an economic development director position. I'll have a different resume, all my economic development background, and then I'm just applying for those specific jobs with that. So that's what I've kind of developed over the years. So I have that in sort of my bank. The other thing I'll mention too is even if you don't meet the minimum requirements, in today's job market is a great time to be a graduating student right now. There's a lot of job vacancies and openings right now. They also say that mostly women and minorities tend to not apply if they don't see that they meet all the requirements of the position, because you feel like, oh, I'm not qualified enough. However, in contrast to males who apply, they have a tendency to still apply even if they don't meet the requirements of the position. So it's a comprehensive study they've done, and for some reason, women minorities tend not to apply. And I would just encourage you to probably go ahead and still put in an application, even if you only meet 6 out of the 10 requirements. I would still put it in there, because cities like Fillmore and Moore Park, where it's hard pressed to find really good talent, and we may be able to work with somebody and hire them, and maybe even be willing to train them if they don't meet, every single requirement. So I would still encourage you to do that.
That's one of the big
Yeah.
differences between a civil service environment and a non-civil service environment. That I would encourage people to apply more liberally into a non-civil service environment, because there's more flexibility.
Yeah.
I mean, we get audited by the state on a regular basis. We're working towards an audit now, I believe, next year. And at one point in time, the county in Ventura scored so low that the state told us if we didn't get our act together the next time they audited us, we would be pulled into the state system. So we got our act together, and we are now very compliant. And we had one of the best reviews they had done the last time around, which was, I think, in 2017. So they're way overdue right now, but that's because of the pandemic.
Absolutely. Yeah, Erica?
Yeah, one last thing. A good professor from my undergrad program once told, I was in a similar setting from this one, just on the other end, that it's easier to update your resume and keep it current rather than waiting for you to update it right before applying for a job. So that was one of the habits that I took from that webinar that I was sitting at the time, and then just started implementing it, because while you're doing the job, it's a lot easier for you to pinpoint some of those duties rather than waiting up until you're trying to fill out the application, update your cover letter, and then update your resume. So it's a good habit to get into if that's something that you would like to implement as well.
I encourage my fellow employees to do that all the time, especially those that I know are eager to advance. There was one lady who was very competent. She was supporting the HR director, and she really wanted to get into human resources. And every time she would do something new, I'd go, "Did you put that on your list for your application the next time you apply?" And she go, "Oh, thank you for reminding me." Well, today she's a personnel analyst at the county. So, it really does work. I wholeheartedly agree with what Erica recommended. Keep a list and keep it current, and use the word, and then you can always copy and paste once you've got it the way you want it.
I'm going to jump into the interviews. Erica, what's your advice for preparing for interviews, and sort of what tips can you share with everybody?
I think you have to come prepared. I mean, do your research, do your homework, spend some time, trying to investigate what does the city really do, depending on the position you're applying, or the department. If you're looking into moving into HR, how many bargaining units the city or county has. How many employees are you looking at supervising? Look at the MOU, look at the salary schedules. I mean, most of the information nowadays is available because we're required to have it posted on websites. And sometimes you run into cities that may not necessarily be complying with that requirement. That happened to me when I applied to Fillmore. So I grabbed the phone and I called, and I didn't tell the person who answered that I was submitting an application. I just said, "Hey, I'm just calling to wonder, how many employees do you currently have?" And then I said, "And what is the name of your bargaining unit?" Because I knew they had only one. And so doing that extra step will make you come more prepared for the interview. And also make sure that you spend some time drafting your elevator pitch or that introduction, because the first question that every employer is going to ask is, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your experience, and what do you bring to us as a candidate. So I think telling your story, telling them who you are, what you've done, and what you're trying to accomplish, and have it in a nice, well-structured manner will always create a really good impression for the panel that you're interviewing with.
Great advice. Katie?
Yeah, I always recommend people that are interested in working for the county. I will ask them, I will say, "How much detail are you interested in pursuing?" And they'll go, "Well, tell me." And I go, "Well, you can go to the county website, hover over departments and all the names come up. So look at the websites, because each department will represent itself, and tell you the story about the different divisions, especially the departments that are multi-division, like the General Service Agency or RMA, Public Works, lots and lots of information to be had. Our job descriptions actually cite the union that represents each one, and our job bulletins do the same. If it's a management position and unrepresented, then that is indicated also. And our MOUs are all, and the management resolution are all online, so you can read that. There's personnel rules and regs. I tell this to all, people, and some people are really interested and they want more information and more information, so I can give them more. Some people, that's enough, thanks. So it just depends on the individual that I'm talking to at the time. Some people are so detail oriented that they're interested in figuring out which classifications are allocated to which departments. And you can figure that out by going to the auditor controller and looking at publications. It's on the left-hand side, and open it up and see all the different budget PDFs. And one of them is a summary of positions, and it shows which positions are allocated to which departments for the year. So there's all sorts of information that you can get out there. It's just a matter of how much time and how much energy you want to spend to get to know the public sector entity that you're interested in working for.
Yeah, this is great. A couple of things I'll just add to that. In terms of doing your research, definitely Google that city and see if there's any controversies. Find out if there's any pressing issues that they've been addressing recently. You may get a question about that. For me in Moorpark, I even contacted the school district. I talked to the Chamber of Commerce person. I was trying to do all kinds of background check on, the community and the city staff and employees, or the city manager I was going to be working for. And then I probably watched like 2 to 3 years worth of city council meetings to sort of know exactly who the council members are, or what issues are they facing, et cetera, et cetera. The other tips I'll, share is, most questions you're going to get on interviews is about like situational examples. Ask you have, a question, and then you can provide sort of, okay, well, how have you handled the situation? So I know for me, what's helped out other people have advised me on is write out different situations that you've handled, right? Actually type it up, right? And it should have a story. It should be a story, right? Because you want to be very engaging during the interviews. It should have a beginning, middle, and end. So what was this? What was the problem? What was your role in it? What did you do about it? And what was the result? And if you can keep it into like a paragraph or so, with those types of ways to format and storytell that specific example, and you'll find out if you have really like maybe 5 to 6 good examples, and you memorize it and you keep memorizing how to say it, how to tell that story, those 5 or 6 examples could probably apply to any one of the questions they ask you during the interview, right? How do you supervise? How have you faced a problem? How have you how did you handle when you disagreed with your supervisor? How do you handle a difficult coworker or customer? These questions aren't going to be a surprise. They're just asked in different ways, and the answers to them, you could probably have 5 or 6 really solid examples that could probably apply to any of those. And then the other thing that's helped me out is how you speak is as important as what you say. So have, not rushing to answer the question, speaking very clearly. For me, I've had to practice basically talking to myself in front of a mirror over and over and over again. And, it's almost just like memorizing a script or something, so that when you come to the interview, you come in there very confident, you're very natural, you have a good pace, people can hear you. So I found that those things have been really helpful too.
I even suggest, if people want to ask me questions about interviews, to pair up with someone that they know and have them ask questions relative, give them the job bulletin and let them think of questions that might be relative. You can use the tasks on the job bulletin that say what what the position does, and then create a question around the task and ask the question. And that way you can go through a mini practice interview with a friend or a family member just to get the practice.
Definitely. Yeah, at this point, I'll open it up. Does anyone have any questions so far, or any comments or any other tips they'd like to share?
There's one other thing that I think we should address is that there's a big difference between the recruitments for the operations support staff, even management, and then the executive level. And the executive level in most public sector agencies, whether or not they're civil service, are at will. And at will is a whole different process. And generally, it's something that would be someone farther down in their, with experience. But it's also important to know that those at will positions, they can be a whole different type of process. They could just ask for a resume and a letter and letters of reference. And if you see that, then usually it will say this is an at will. And so at will doesn't have any civil service protections. One of the big things about civil service, I didn't know this when I started working at the county, is once you've passed a probationary period in your current classification, you have what they call property rights to your job. So that means that they have to go through a specific progressive discipline process to remove you from that position. So unless you promote, and usually, if you promote, then you lose that property rights for a period of time. Usually it's less than the first one, especially if it's in a series. But yeah, that's a big difference. Whereas executive positions are all at will and they can be gone anytime unless you have some sort of employment contract.
Definitely. Good point. Yeah, and we can definitely talk more about executive recruitment if you guys are interested. But yeah, any other interview tips or application tips that you guys may have and want to share with the group or have any questions?
What about Trisha?
Yeah, Trisha's an HR.
Yeah, she's part of us.
Yeah.
I don't have any suggestions. I think everything you guys threw out there was really great, and I was taking notes myself. So Thank you for that.
Yeah, and if you guys all don't know, Trisha works for Cayugas Water District and is in the HR division there. So any experiences that you guys want to share in terms of applications or interviews or I mean, I think especially if you're looking at changing careers and things of that nature, I often get this question. I've worked in the nonprofit world or in the private sector, but I want to work in the public sector and government now. How do I, I'm not getting any, job interview invitations. I think some of it is going to be, you're going to have to sort of be able to communicate through your resume and cover letter how some of your private sector experience is transferable to the public sector, right? It's a difficult, transition, but I think if you can make that connection to an HR person who's reviewing your resume, and like what Katie and Erica said, all the answers to getting your cover letter and resume through the first round, all the answers are on the job bulletin, right? So I always advise my mentees and people I talk to, take the keywords in the job bulletin and make sure you repeat them in your cover letter and your resume. Because the HR analyst, this is what I used to do when I was an analyst, I was screening all that. All I know is public sector stuff. All I know is this job, and all I'm doing is reading this bulletin on this side, and I'm reviewing someone's resume cover letter on this side. And if I don't see the keywords that match and make it easy for me to screen those out, it's probably the reason why you may not be in through the first round of interviews, because I didn't connect the keywords from the bulletin in your cover letter and resume. You sort of made it a challenge for me and made it more difficult for me to kind of dig through your resume and cover letter. But if you can just I'm not saying copy or anything, I'm just saying replicate and use the key words, that's definitely going to help you stand out and at least get you through the first round. So that's, again, all the answers are on the job bulletin, and don't be afraid to use some of the terminology in there.
This is a really good time to apply to public sector. I just read an article this afternoon from the administrative side of governmentjobs.com, which is called NeoGov. And it was an article about how the public sector is having difficulty obtaining employees because there's the silver tsunami, which I was part of, where baby boomers are leaving the workplace and wanting to work part-time, which I'm doing now. And then the fact that the newer generations coming up are much more mobile than the past generations. So there's a lot of open vacancies right now in public sector. So don't give up, just apply. And, I have people say, well, I don't know if I should take the interview or not. I go, if you get invited to an interview, take the interview, because even if you don't get the job or you're thinking maybe it's not the right time for you, it's practice. And you have to remember, every interaction you have is an interview. You never know who you're going to wind up reporting to. And my best example of that is that in 1993, I was working for the healthcare agency, and a new programmer came on board and was helping me develop a database so I could track the physician remuneration. Well, years later, I wound up in IT services, and that person and I were promoted into management at the same time. And before I went to the CEO's office, he was the chief information officer, and I reported to him. And today he is the assistant county executive officer at the county of Ventura. So you never know who you're interacting with, and who, all those networks are really, really, really important. Even in interviews, it may not be that job, but that hiring manager in that job may meet you and like you, even if they can't place you. And then they have someone that they know, and the name comes up. Oh yeah, I was really impressed. That person interviewed really well. And so every interaction is important.
Great advice. Good advice. Erica, any other tips you'd like to share? And then we'll kind of chat about professional associations or other things. Yeah.
No, definitely. And I think even if you go through a round of interviews, don't get discouraged. Sometimes it takes some time, but take the best out of it, and know that I always tell this to every candidate, the fact that you're here, because especially when I see them very nervous, I'm like, take a deep breath. The panel just wants to get to know the candidate. So if you've made it that far to an interview, just relax, be yourself. You're already a winner because you're sitting in that panel discussion. And just remember that you are selling yourself to that panel members. You have to pretty much explain to them why you're going to be a good asset for their organization. And having done the research and being prepared, make sure that you're doing those mock interviews with peers, with professors, with any sort of partnerships that you may have built. That helps and goes a long way. And I think it's just nature. We all get nervous when we're placed in a situation that's a little bit uncomfortable, or like the hot seat of the interview. But you just have to be confident and have trust that what you've learned, that you've prepared, and just go and be yourself at the interview. And even if you've had a bad experience with a past employer, refrain yourself from speaking negatively about past employees, because that is a big turnout off for all the organization. And I think if the environment was bad or whatever the situation may have been, try to focus on the positive things that you learned, and the reason why you were placed in a certain situation only helps you become better at the end of the day. So those are basically some of the extra tips that I can give you.
Yeah, for sure. And do your research too about who may be interviewing you on the panel, right? I mean, you can probably guesstimate who it'll be, or sometimes you can call HR and ask them, hey, can you share with me who may be on the panel, interview panel? And they may share it with you. I know for the Moore Park position here for assistant city manager, I asked, well, do you know who's going to be on the 3 panels that are going to be interviewing me? And all they could tell me was, well, one panel is going to be made up of city managers from the region. Okay. I don't know who they are, but I know there's 10 cities in the county, so I can do my research on them on LinkedIn and find out if there's a connection I have with any of them. The second panel, they told me, well, you're going to have a panel with department heads. Well, that's easy. I'm going to look up all those department heads. I'm going to check all their LinkedIn pages too, and get some intel, because you just want to be prepared, you know? And so, especially for a job you really want, you're going to take your time to do your research. And so I think that's super important. The other thing I'll mention is, you guys know, I've always emphasized networking is super important. I think that's why we have an ICMA student chapter here. And being part of ICMA is really important. There's 2 conferences coming up that I'll post in the chat. So one of them is the ICMA. It's a regional conference. It's going to be happening in Long Beach, but it's called like a Reimagine conference on June 7th through 8th, which I'll be attending, and a lot of folks I know here in Ventura are attending too. And then MMASC, the Municipal Management Association of Southern California, is planning their summer session somewhere here in East Ventura County. So I'm actually working with Omira right now to see if we can have it at Cal Lutheran. But this is MMAC, if you guys don't know, Municipal Management Association of Southern California. This is sort of the professional group that you would join after you graduate, because these are made up of early to mid and even some department head level members. There's about 1,000 members in Southern California. And especially if you're focused on applying for a job in Southern California, these are the people you want to connect with, because if there's a city you're applying to and you know someone from MMAC who already works there, they can give you all the inside information about what it's like to work there and if it's even worth applying for or something. It's just a great group of folks. That's where I sort of got started in my kind of networking profession at the local government level. And then MMAC sort of helped me graduate into joining ICMA and be seeing sort of the national and international things the profession does. The other thing I'm going to mention to you guys, I haven't mentioned this to any of the ICMA student chapter folks here, is I'm actually working with Cal ICMA, which is the state chapter of ICMA, working with their board to organize sort of a virtual meeting with all the 9 ICMA student chapters in California. And about 6 of them have responded back to me. And what we're going to do, I think it's going to be the first time it's happening, is have all the student chapter presidents and advisors, whoever, just exchange information, learn about what each of the chapter is doing. Some of them are very new, just like Cal Lutheran. And then potentially do a meetup either at the Long Beach conference or at the annual conference in the fall, or just have virtual meetings throughout the year. And then the Cal ICMA may be considering having a ICMA student chapter member on their board. And so just more to come on that. Just wanted to mention it to this group. All right, anything else? Any questions, any other insights you guys would like to share? Anything else I may have missed?
Well, the other thing I was thinking of is, depending on the area of public service that you're interested in going into, an individual, there are professional organizations dedicated to each professional area. For me, you know, as an HR manager, I'm a member and I've been certified through IPMA HR and SHRM. If you're into working in planning or something like that, there's planning organizations. So you can just Google them and find the organizations that are relevant to the different professions. But I think that's a good way to get in the loop too with your own fields, that would be helpful.
And I just shared in the chat as we wrap up here, some fellowship programs that exist out there. Some of these are catered specifically to graduate students who are graduating or maybe graduating. A few are for undergrads. I list these because there's certain people I know who completed these programs and have said very good things about them. I grew up in the city of Torrance. I did the city of Torrance Management Aid Program, working in the city manager's office. That was my first sort of stint in the city manager's environment. And the last link there is the New York City Urban Fellows Program. That's the reason why I ended up working for the city of New York. And there's jobs in the political, public sector, you know, the state legislature. I think I put the Choral Fellowship there too. So there's a wide range of programs there. And then I know many of our cities, maybe we don't advertise it, but you could always contact us for internships, maybe paid or unpaid. I know for here in Moore Park, we're about to get our budget approved next month, and we do have some funding for an intern to be paid throughout the year. So just contact us, contact me, Erica, or if you know, just call their HR or their city manager's office in that city or in the county and see if you can get an internship. So I would definitely encourage that if you're interested. All right. Well, with that.